Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, quick thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on any game. Get up to $1,111 in free bets courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Gonna be back. Do want to switch gears, and I want to talk about a topic that I don't talk about a ton here on the Aaron Torres Pod and the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, and that is college football recruiting. Now, many of you have heard me do this spiel before, but for those who haven't, forgive me. But the bottom line is I don't talk much college football recruiting, and it's for one simple reason. It's not because you guys and girls aren't into it, because you guys and girls love it. But the bottom line is a couple things. One, it's just not my area of expertise. I think I'm pretty good talking about the games on the field on Saturdays when it comes to college football. I'm good at college hoops. I'm good at realignment. I'm good at the portal. I'm even good at some college hoops recruiting. But college football recruiting is just a different beast. There's only so much bandwidth. There's only so much you can fit between these two ears before, like, you just can't be an expert on everything. So I don't talk about it a ton. There are a lot of great guys and girls that cover it full time. But also the reason I don't talk as much college football recruiting is because in general, 1 to 2 players doesn't make all that much of a difference, right? Like there's a lot of schools that have gotten 5 stars through the years, but unlike basketball, where 1 to 2 players can change your program, in football, it's about the totality. It's about the quality, but also the quantity as well. Georgia didn't get to where Georgia is. Clemson didn't get to where Clemson is. Alabama certainly didn't get to where Alabama is by getting 1 or 2 5 stars. It's by stacking great class on top of great class, bodies on top of bodies on top of bodies on top of bodies. And so I don't generally talk recruiting for that reason, but I will say that every once in a while, an individual commitment to me speaks to a bigger story that is worth discussing. And I do believe we have that here today on a Wednesday in July. That is because there is a 5-star linebacker by the name of DeMarcus Riddick from the state of Alabama. Had been committed to Georgia, but on Wednesday, there were rumors he was reopening his recruitment, and he officially made a flip. Was down to Georgia, Alabama, and a little school called Auburn and the Auburn Tigers. And on Wednesday, DeMarcus Riddick, 5-star linebacker from the state of Alabama, commits to, drumroll please, he commits to Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. And so what I would say about this particular commitment is as follows. I understand that one player at Auburn is not going to put them on the same level as Georgia and Alabama, and this is not the first 5-star commitment to ever commit to the Auburn Tigers. But at the same time, I do believe this speaks to a bigger story, and that's this. In about 7 short months as Auburn's head coach, I believe Hugh Freeze has done about as good as any coach could possibly do, and I believe this is the greatest sign of things to come under Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And it's funny because I go back to the days leading up to Hugh Freeze's hiring. If you remember, now admittedly, I'm a little biased. I've had Coach Freeze on this podcast before, but if you remember in the lead up to Auburn hiring him, I said, I think this is the guy. Love Lane Kiffin. I don't think he's leaving Ole Miss. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, is a guy that I also liked, but is that guy going to win in the SEC right away? I don't know. He's never done it at that level. Coach Prime ends up at Colorado. I said, go get Hugh Freeze. And I got all the natural pushback. Oh, all those off the field problems. And look at what happened at Ole Miss and da-da-da-da. And my answer was consistent. I don't care about anything that has nothing to do with football. I get that things did not end well at Ole Miss. There are things that Coach Freeze has talked about many times, including on this show. And my belief is if his family's forgiven him, if his daughters have forgiven him, if his wife has forgiven him, who am I to judge? Why do I care? And so I got all this pushback. Oh, he can't be. This is what I know about Hugh Freeze. He's proven an ability. First of all, most importantly, this guy has won every single place he's been and won quick. He won at Lambeth College. I don't even know where that is. He won at Arkansas State. He won at Ole Miss. He won at Liberty. He won in high school. He's won in the SEC. He's won at the D2 level. Everywhere this guy goes, he wins. But most importantly, as I said, this guy gets the SEC and he gets what it's about. And so what I want to do, why I'm talking about it today, it's not just about DeMarcus Riddick. It's about everything that he has done since taking over as Auburn head coach. And for those of you who haven't been paying attention, buckle up. First off, when he got the job, Auburn's recruiting for 2023 was in the tank. We talked about it at the time. They had a recruiting class ranked in the 60s nationally. I think Brian Harsin his entire time signed one top 100 prospect. And I could be mistaken on this, but I believe it was a player that had been committed to Jeremy Pruitt in Tennessee before Jeremy Pruitt gets fired. That's how he ended up at Auburn. But at the time, and we discussed this, I remember talking about it, there were basically reports that like Brian Harsin just didn't care about recruiting and wasn't putting in the work. And what I said at the time was, that's like me being married and saying to my wife, yeah, you know what? Communication ain't that important. Talking about our problems, it's not really that important. I'm good with it. We're not going to do it. Communication is the bedrock of a marriage, and recruiting is the bedrock of what makes college football programs successful. And so the idea this guy wasn't recruiting, the idea that Hugh Freeze took over a recruiting class that was ranked in the 60s, insanity. But what's even more insane is what Hugh Freeze did after he got the job. Do you know that by the time National Signing Day, the second one in February came around, Auburn finished with a top 20 recruiting class. They flipped a top 100 edge rusher, Kedrick Falk from Florida State to Auburn. They flipped a 4-star corner, Kyan Lee from Ohio State to Auburn. Flipped a 4-star safety, Sylvester Smith from Tennessee to Auburn. Flipped an offensive lineman from Miami to Auburn. One, when you flip guys from Florida State, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Miami, you know you're doing something right. But two, to get that class in the top 20, I thought was as impressive as anything anyone had done last February. Now I get it. You're not going to beat Georgia. Like if Georgia had the 20th ranked recruiting class, Georgia fans would be jumping off buildings. Okay. I get it. And I get one class on the fringes of the top 20 is not going to flip this program and put them in a position to win the SEC. At the same time, though, he did about as well as he could. And then did you see what he did in the portal? Cleaned up in the portal, probably as well as anybody. Dion and Coach Prime in Colorado, I guess Dion and Coach Prime are the same person. They had more volume of players, but what Auburn did was kind of incredible. And most specifically, what most impressed me, Hugh Freeze seemed to address the three biggest weaknesses that he had. They needed a quarterback. They went out and got Peyton Thorne from Michigan State, won 11 games 2 years ago as their starting quarterback. Needed wide receiver help. Got Jair Shorter from North Texas. I think it was 10, 11 touchdowns he had last year receiving. Caleb Burton, really highly ranked player that was at Ohio State. Oh, by the way, how about the offensive line? The offensive line has been a problem at Auburn since the Gus Malzahn era, okay? Hugh Freeze went out and got probably a minimum of 4 starting caliber players between the two portal cycles, December and also in the springtime. Added Avery Jones, a center from East Carolina, Illinois. A lot of Big Ten schools, a lot of SEC schools wanted him bad. Ends up at Auburn. Offensive tackle Dylan Wade, some believe was the best offensive tackle in the portal from Tulsa. Follows his former head coach, Phil Montgomery, who is now the offensive coordinator at Auburn. Also added Gunnar Britton from Western Kentucky, all-conference player. And oh, by the way, a second player from Tulsa on the offensive line, Jaden Muskrat, hell of a name, by the way, commits to Auburn as well. Top 20 recruiting class, probably the number 2 portal class. And what's most impressive, he's getting a jump start on this 2024 class. When you're a new head coach, and I get it, it's the portal world. But what does Nick Saban say? What does Kirby Smart say? What do all these guys say? You still want, Brian Kelly said this at SEC Media Days, you still want to build through the high school ranks, and Auburn's off to a great start. I remember talking about this Walker White, four-star quarterback, top 100 quarterback from the state of Arkansas, committed to Auburn. I think it was January or February. And now you add DeMarcus Riddick, this 5-star linebacker. And so I want to be abundantly clear. I just want to be abundantly clear on this. I get, again, for the 1,000th time, one good portal cycle, a top 20 recruiting class, one individual 5-star will not change the Auburn program overnight. That's why I don't talk a ton of recruiting. One player doesn't change everything. But to me, these are statements. Hugh Freeze is starting to stack statement on top of statement on top of statement on top of statement. And that statement is, we're not backing down from anybody. We're not afraid of anybody. And we are recruiting and putting together a roster that we believe will one day contend at the top of the SEC. The other thing I'm thinking, you talk about a perfect time for Hugh Freeze to enter the SEC, re-enter the SEC. Couple things stand out. One, can flip a roster quicker than ever before. Two, and I think this is important, divisions go away next year. Now, I know Auburn will still probably end up with Alabama and Georgia. They do in the 2024 schedule, probably will going forward if it goes to 9 games. But again, the 12-team playoff era, you don't need to be the best in your league. You don't even need to be the best in your division. There are going to be opportunities to compete at the highest level. We're going to get there with Auburn. We're certainly not there yet, but man, oh man, it's hard not to be excited for the Auburn Tigers and what Hugh Freeze has done. I think he's done about as good of a job as anyone possibly could have with the recruiting that he's done since taking over at Auburn. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Also, new episodes of the Aaron Torres Pod every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, wherever you get your podcast.